In the final part of this video series, we'll customize our own backdrops from a few different sources. In part 1, we arranged and printed backdrops on our home printer. Please see the video here for how to inexpensively create backdrops of any size to custom fit your layout's needs. Sometimes a background downloaded from the internet or taken on your phone will do just fine. But if you model a prototype and want a specific scene, sometimes nothing beats the real deal. If you can't get there in person, we'll show you the next best thing. And welcome to Model Trains Made Simple. We'll look at 3 different methods for getting location-specific backdrops, and then discuss how to fix them up for your needs. If it's not practical to get to the location you model, then it's time to head over to Google Street View to take a virtual tour of your scene. The first method involves downloading a tool called Street View Download 360, available for Mac or Windows. Once installed, it's time to fire up Google Maps in your browser. Navigate to the scene you would like to depict on your layout. Go ahead and collapse the side panel. Then drop this little guy on the road you wish to use for your panorama. Moving along the road until you find the spot you're looking for. If you've got poor lighting, too many cars in the shot, or just the wrong weather, go up to the timeline bar in the upper left and scroll through the options. You'll see when a Google car has visited this location before. Be aware that the Google car's resolution increased substantially around 2010, so if possible, use a panorama from a more recent time. Google also tends to update city streets more frequently than rural roads. When moving along a road, it is also useful to skip ahead and see nearby roads using this tool on the bottom left. When you've found the location you like, select the entire link from your browser. Head over to iStreetView.com. On the left, paste the Street View link into the Load Panorama button. You'll see the map jump to your location. Next, copy the smaller link from the paperclip icon on the center right. This is the panorama's ID. Open up Street View 360 and paste the ID into the second bar. Select a place to save the panorama in the bar above it and give it a name. Finally, select the resolution to download. It crashed for me on the highest resolution, but you can experiment yourself. Then click Download Panorama. A preview will appear below that should look something like this. Now let's load up this image in Photoshop or your program of choice and get the part we want ready to print. We will crop the image so it takes the shape of a panorama, discarding most of the top and bottom. First, let's get rid of this bright sun section by cropping it out. Depending on what we're modeling, we may or may not want this road crossing our scene in the middle. Each program's editing tools will be a bit different, so I won't go into detail here. Also, let's get rid of this telephone pole. From the last video, you will know I usually cut out the sky and replace it with something better. With the sky removed, we can place some dramatic clouds over the mountains. Or simply blue sky would work, pretty much whatever suits your mood. This road might make a pretty cool train crossing on the layout if you can sync it up with a physical one. But for now, let's remove it and assume the trains are passing along the back of this industry. A couple clicks with the Clone Stamp tool in Photoshop or any of the newer replacement tools found in more recent software, and there is no evidence a road ever existed. You can refer to Part 1 for how to prepare this panorama for printing. The next technique is a bit more labor intensive, but gives you the ability to put together complex layers of scenes. Here we will take a screen cap directly from Google Street View and paste it into our photo editing program. This will allow us to then move the Google car down the road a ways and take another shot to piece together with the first one. You can do this an endless number of times to create fluid backdrops. Once in Photoshop, we will blend the edges between the elements using a combination of the eraser tool and the clone stamp tool. You can also remove the sky if it makes sense at this point, but in this case we will blend the two together using some additional elements. Let's try this tree first. Granted, this pine tree looks a little out of place in Southern California. Let's add a fire hydrant to the scene. There are an endless amount of possibilities, and just to give you an idea, here's an industrial element. We'll place it over here, and then let's flip around the arrangement in case it might fit better that way on our layout. Now for our third and final technique. Let's say we want to show a city scene, but also want to include some distant mountains that are only visible on a clear day. Seattle was a good example of this. I wanted to show the distant Cascade Mountains, including the iconic Mount Rainier. But none of the street view scenes showed anything resembling a mountain in the distant background. To do that, I loaded Seattle into Google Maps. Now switch to satellite view and enable 3D mode in the bottom right. By holding the Control key on your keyboard, you can rotate the 3D view around to view the horizon. This feature does take a lot of computer processing, so be patient here for Google to render the scene. Once in Photoshop, more layering was done using the panorama to add foreground buildings from Google Street View. Several shots were patched together and blended for Auburn, Washington. From Emerald Downs to several of the actual industries that are served by the railroad here. You can also see where I blended scenes that weren't next to one another or didn't blend well for various reasons using tree elements. I actually reused the Mount Rainier backdrop up at Seattle itself. The scene consists of the backdrop and clouds, several layers of buildings including the CenturyLink Stadium, which was also from Street View. Another street view of some of Seattle's buildings left me a bit wanting for more skyscrapers and other tall buildings in the scene. Sydney, Australia filled out the skyline, giving the backdrop a dense modern city feel that you get when you step off a train at King Street Station. As they say, the sky's the limit. I hope you've enjoyed this series on printing your own panoramic backdrops. Sorry it took so long to get to part 2. Stay tuned for more 3D printing and layout construction videos, as well as our usually monthly ops sessions. Then a rural road. Rural road. Rural road. Rural road. Rural road. Rural road.